we are going to be having a student panel, and I think this is the bit that I personally have been the most excited about. I hope that you all are also pretty excited about it. I think there are, we're gonna get a lot of answers to questions that we got early on in the event, and yeah, let's just dive right in. Again, my name is Obella. I'm going to moderate this panel. We're going to spotlight all of our speakers and start bringing them in. And we can just, as we do that, go ahead and jump in. Julian, you came up first. You can jump in, give your like classic Georgetown intro, who you are, what you do, where you're from, like ways that you might be involved on campus. And then also if you could cap it with a little bit of why you chose to come to Georgetown.
Gotcha. Okay. If I miss anything, just let me know. I'm gonna try and take that. So again, my name is Julian Brown. I'm a sophomore in the MSB, majoring in management and either finance or OPM, not absolute quite yet. Born and raised in Chicago. Involvement on campus. I'm a part of Hilltop Consultants. Consulting is something that's kind of pushed in the MSB alongside investment banking. So I decided to look into that as I thought it was interesting. I'm also on the board of an investing club that's actually launching this fall called Black Gen Capital, myself and a few fellow students. And why Georgetown? I'd say I have three reasons for that one. Primarily just the community and the outreach. Events like this, when I went, what was that, 2019, I want to say, for Hoya Saxa Weekend, Georgetown was the only university that offered programs like this where, in my case, they flew us out to campus for Hoya Saxa Weekend, which was an experience that stood out from everybody else. I really appreciated it. And there was a sense of community that I just didn't find elsewhere. Also financially, I mean, being a need-based institution, that was also certainly key. And then, yeah, and also just interest in business, having a dedicated business school. So that appealed to me. So, yeah.
Perfect. Andre, could you kick us off next?
Hi, everybody. My name is Henri Liddell. I'm currently a senior in the college, double majoring in art and sociology with a minor in film and media studies. Some of my core involvements on campus have been, so a lot of like API organizations and organizing. So I've been a part of the Asian Pacific Islander Leadership Forum. I'm also a part of the Georgetown University's Club Filipino. I'm a member of the GSP Student Board or the Georgetown Scholars Program Student Board. And yeah, and I've also worked for the CMEA as their intern, as like this is my fourth year going on, fourth and last. And yeah, I think that pretty much sums up my core involvements. I think the last question was, why did I decide to go to Georgetown? So I think, let's see. I think aid is always, is always always a nice thing to say. Number two is like I wanted to kind of like find that distance in California because that's where I'm originally from. I'm from San Diego, California. So shout out to all my West Coast people out there or California people. If y'all are in this chat, welcome. And then third and finally, and I think honestly the most important reason was because I got this opportunity to visit Georgetown through Hoya Saxa Weekend, like Julian also. I came into Hoya Saxa Weekend for regular decision weekend. I think it was spring of 2017. Yeah, spring 2017. And I think that was just kind of like the most like enchanting experience about my career at Georgetown. And it's why I learned to love Georgetown, why I learned about the CMEA. It's where I first learned about all these different resources on campus. And it's where I felt like I could find that sense of belonging and find my footing on campus because of this weekend. And so I'm very, very privileged to have had that opportunity because I'm not sure if I would have even be at Georgetown without Hoya Saxa Weekend. And I'm super privileged to be here now. So yeah, that sums up to my intro. And yeah, Obella, back to you.
Thank you. Loving all the Hoya Saxa Weekend love. Tossing, could you jump in next?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Tassine. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a junior in the college, majoring in psychology and women's and gender studies. I'm a student intern at the CMEA for diversity ed. I've also been involved with YLEAD, Young Leaders in Education About Diversity, as a first-year student, a peer leader, and a co-coordinator. I've also been in Leaders in Education about Diversity, as a student facilitator. I've been a part of Escape as a first-year student and as an Escape leader. And I've also had a radio show with WGTB, Georgetown's radio station. So those are a few things that I do on campus, and where I found my community. And in terms of why I chose Georgetown, I felt like, okay, so definitely aid, but I also felt like I was at a place in my like academic career where I was like trying to explore my interests and wasn't sure of what I wanted to really go into. And I felt like Georgetown had like a variety of classes in the areas I wanted to explore. I also just like loved DC. I loved that it was like a smaller campus. And I also feel like I got introduced to Y-Lead and programs like that. That really drew me to it as like a person who was going into like a PWI and trying to find community. So yeah.
De'Ara, would you mind jumping in next?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is De'Ara Graves. I am a senior in the NHS School of Nursing and Health Studies. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm sorry, I don't have them up on my screen, but I major in, I mentioned I'm a senior, so I'm graduating in May. Thank the Lord. Not to say that I will very much miss my time at Georgetown, but this has been a long 4 years, and this has definitely been a year where I'm like, I'm looking forward to the culmination of all the hard work that I've done in all the 4 years, and it would be really, really nice to celebrate that sooner rather than later. So a senior, and I study healthcare management and policy with a concentration in policy analysis. So the reason why I chose Georgetown, I mean, we've all mentioned finances and things like that. And while I do think that that is really important, and that definitely went into my own personal decision, I visited Georgetown probably, I visited campus probably a year out. I live in Columbia, Maryland. That's my hometown. So I'm actually not too far from campus. And I had the chance to come on campus. And one of the things that stuck out to me most was that this is a social justice oriented school. This is a place where a campus where you can have those types of conversations. You see most of the panelists here have their pronouns listed. We talk a lot about issues that impact our communities, even outside of my own personal circle. I came in as a community scholar. We talk a lot about community, and I think that that program has also really helped me to facilitate bonds with folks that are from similar backgrounds as me. So I think that definitely this is a really wonderful school, and you'll hear more wonderful things from the panelists. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, De'Ara. Roberto?
Hi everyone, my name is Roberto Hidalgo. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a junior in the college, and I'm double majoring in sociology and African American studies. I think that's all for like the introduction. The things that I'm involved with, I am a proud Casa Latina resident, virtual resident this year. I'm also involved in I used to be involved in Hoyas for Immigrant Rights. I'm very, very proud of what they've been able to achieve in the past, and have kind of really interacted with the club culture on campus. So I look forward to answering any questions about that. I also was involved in GU Riqueza Dominicana, the Dominican Culture Club, even though I am not Dominican, and I can talk a little bit more about that when we kind of talk about culture and finding community on campus. And you can find community anywhere on campus, so I can kind of expand more on that. Apart from that, I'm also in the Baker Scholars Program, which centered around business for students in the college who may not have that exposure. And one of the reasons I wanted to come to Georgetown was because I actually wasn't able to make my Hoya Saxa Weekend. And that's why it's very important for me to actually be here, because I wish I had that opportunity. But I did have the privilege to visit. I had a friend who was a senior who had grown up near me. I was born and raised in Harlem in New York City. So if you're from New York City, got a lot of love for you. And he lived at the Black House, which is right next to Casa Latina, actually. And so I got to see this like really kind of small community on campus, and I fell in love with it immediately. We stayed up all night talking while I was visiting, and I was sold on Georgetown, and I hung out with both the residents of the Black House and Casa Latina. I think they were the 2017 residents or 2018 residents, and it kind of opened my eyes. And I fell in love with the school. So really looking forward to kind of expanding on that, especially because I think community is so important, and building upon the community already established here is something that I think I've dedicated some time to. Apart from that, I've done Kids to College, which I'm actually repping right now, which is another CMEA program, where we go to Ward 7 and 8 and kind of introduce the concept of college to students. And it's a really, really rewarding experience. So thank you.
That is great. I'm already so excited about where we're going to be going in this conversation. Last but not least, our lovely Hoya Saxa Weekend committee member, Thais.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming today. I am Thais Rodriguez. I am a senior in the SFS studying culture and politics with a theme in immigration. I was born and raised in Pomona, California. I'm like 30 miles east of LA. And in terms of what I'm involved with at school here at Georgetown, so about a few years, I was a co-coordinator for the on-campus and the Tubman Elementary program for DC Schools program. And it's basically a program that advocates for immigrant youth in DC and also Georgetown migrant workers. And through DCSP, I was able to work with the Citizen Scholarship Team, which was a collaboration between DCSP and the KI office and the Corp, where we fundraise scholarships for Georgetown immigrant workers who wanted to apply to the citizenship exam. And I felt like through those two networks, I was able to like expand my interest in like immigration, law, gender, especially with the community in DC, especially with the community, the Latinx community in DC. I'm also currently the co-coordinator for the alternative break program called Keynote Border Immersion, which focuses on border tensions in the US-Mexico border, Arizona-Mexican border. And it's like a week-long program where we meet with different community partners that focus on migrant justice issues. And Hoya Saxa Weekend is kind of like the heart piece of my involvement at Georgetown. I didn't attend as a student, but I did become a host my freshman year, and it really centered me back to why I'm here, why I belong here, why it's important to show others the resources that we have here at Georgetown. And it inspired me so much as a host that I joined as a committee member. So I've been my first year I was a transportation coordinator, then I became the hosting coordinator, and now I'm the publicity coordinator. So if you see any of the graphics for this program, that's me and my crew. So yeah, it's a little snippet about what I'm involved with here at Georgetown. And also, I mean, why I came to Georgetown. The bottom line came to financial aid. It was the most accessible in terms of like my ability to attend school. Even though I got into schools back home, none of them were as clear and accessible about the financial aid process and like how much financial aid was given to me. And it just made sense to me to come here. Also, like being in DC, like as a child, I was always involved in like local state politics. And I've never really delved into the world of like federal, constitutional, national politics. And coming to DC just kind of made sense to like dive into that world, especially being part of the School of Foreign Service and, learning about foreign affairs and relations. So yeah, it felt perfectly well to, come and be a student here at Georgetown. So I'm excited to meet y'all, and I'm excited to hear from our student panel.
Love that. There are some fire Hoya Saxa Weekend graphics that you will be seeing shortly that we can directly credit to Thais's artistic genius. So stay tuned. So I have a bunch of questions, but I want to kick off with a question that we got earlier that I think will really set the tone, which is just around like how you got to explore your identity and culture at Georgetown, how it might have facilitated that for you. And also if you could talk a little bit about what your relationship with your identity and culture was prior to coming into this space and how it might have changed. And let's jump around a little bit. Andre, kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Obella. So I think, let's see, I think I should probably talk about I guess my understanding and conception of identity before Georgetown. So I think like the identity that I formed was like understood was kind of just like my Filipino/Filipino American identity, right? I think that is something that has very much been instilled in. Like I was involved in my high school's Filipino club. My ethnic identity was kind of like my most salient identity growing up. It is one I'm most aware of. I think going into Georgetown, there were a lot of things that I kind of learned more about myself that, and different aspects and facets to my identity that I'd never really understood before. I think one of the biggest ones was like being a first generation low income college student. You know, I think that status is something that was very like normalized in like the high school that I was in, and so it's kind of like it never really came across something distinct until like you come to like college that is like predominantly white and predominantly affluent. That is actually um, not the norm in those schools. And so that's where that I think like being a part of like the Georgetown Scholars Program for like people who are part of the community scholars program, you know, that's something that is also like included under the umbrella of like first generation low income college students. That's where I've been able to find that community of among like first generation low income college students. So that's where I've gone explore there. I think the ethnic identity is something that still constantly remains something that is something salient to me. That is some way of me being a part of my school's like being a part of Georgetown's Filipino club has been like a way for me to still connect with others in my community on the premise of like ethnic identity. And then I started, and from there, I think actually at Georgetown is where I started to grasp the idea of Asian American as a pan ethnic label and as like a tool for like political organizing. I think like also like organizing is something that organizing like advocacy like that's something that I never really stepped into or had an understanding of going into Georgetown, and that's something that has been like a learning experience for me. And so I think like especially like Asian American also is like something that I've learned as like uh, how the pan ethnic label is useful for like organizing purposes, and that's why you know that really is informed by like my work that's been like Asian Pacific Islander Leadership Forum, like looking for like trying to like find like support to create like an Asian American affinity space, kind of similar to like Casa Latina and the Black House. Um, Also like promoting like an Asian American Studies program, which is kind of like the two like primary campaigns that we have been like advocating for as a forum. And so I would say like those three identities specifically is something I'll have like different ranges in terms of like my own like personal understanding of it has like and how they have developed during my time in college.
Thank you. Let's have Roberto jump in next.
Yeah, so I guess my understanding of identity back home, because so I'm Ecuadorian, but I grew up in what you would call Spanish Harlem in New York City, um, where there weren't that many Ecuadorians around me, and because my parents were working all the time, it was a primarily Black and Dominican neighborhood. Uh, so a lot of the things that I saw were I celebrated a lot of specifically kind of like Dominican, whether it was like Carnaval as like a holiday or just like Dominican food being like my favorite food. It was very my sense of identity wasn't so much tied to like where my parents were from, because you know they were consistently working, and while I knew like basic things, a lot of my cultural identity went from like just kind of exploring my neighborhood and then eventually like the rest of New York City. So when I got to Georgetown, I never really thought about my own personal identity. It was more so where I was in relation to like who the people were around me. So the minute I stepped into Georgetown, having already like experienced Casa Latina, and having like interacted with people with both members of Casa Latina and Black House before, I knew that it was a place where I could explore like what it meant to identify as Latinx, because it was something I never really thought of as much. And first of all, it was like one of the first times I even heard that phrase. And even then, like seeing how Latinx has evolved into like Latinx, and like the whole, you know, history, cultural, and political impact, and consequences that labels like that could have on communities. It was more so an opportunity for me to grow both in my like own self-awareness and understanding, but also like understand where I could find community and where I could help build up that community. Because I saw that while you could enter these spaces, based on like who you find yourself in community with, there's always an opportunity to kind of build that up, and kind of fix any kind of fragments that exist, because no community is perfect in a way. And I saw that was the biggest opportunity that Georgetown gave me, in regards to like understanding what it meant to be like Latinas. And how that impacted like my choices, what I chose to learn and what I chose to study. And even then, like I'm still consistently learning. So I guess community for me means like an opportunity to be comfortable, but also an opportunity to learn. And so that's why I also wanted to be a Casa Latina resident, to more so highlight the narratives that are often silenced, or ignored, and also explore more about what it means to be like the son of two Ecuadorian immigrants. Like, what does that mean? Where does that place me in the fact that like I've met other Ecuadorians on campus, but I don't necessarily know much about like specific like history or like cultural celebrations, and how it's more so an opportunity to learn than kind of feel like an imposter in a way. So that was something very, very real to me when I got here. And so my freshman year, I took the opportunity to really just soak everything in and kind of really make my own decision and my opinion on like where I think I should be, and how I can help make like the communities that like I've interacted with like a better place, which is like kind of shown through some of like my involvement. And so I'm still also like forming my identity in a way. I'm still consistently learning uh, who I am and what I like. And I don't kind of separate what I like from who I ethnically am. Uh, and it's more so a way to kind of bridge those two things together. So I guess I'm consistently learning, but I'm also like becoming a lot more prideful, and understanding of who I am and why I am the way that I am. And especially in relation to others, and how like together you can create something a lot more united. And it's important to kind of recognize where there are kind of faults and where there are kind of fragments within our community. So I guess it's Georgetown for me has become a place of learning beyond just the classroom. And it's more so about myself and having that reflection and forcing yourself to really put yourself into that, throw yourself into those kind of areas and spaces where you're able to be challenge yourself, and then kind of reconcile with that and really think about it.
Love that. Y'all are already dropping so many good nuggets. Tassine, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you. I really resonated with that because I feel like before I'd gotten to Georgetown, I had never really been part of any dialogue spaces or things like that. And so through Wiley, that was really like the best introduction to Georgetown I could have ever had, and holds a very special place in my heart because it was the first time that I'd ever had the opportunity to process my experiences, and my identities in a way that I never had before, and really where I found my home on campus. And so I would say that I really delved into exploring my identity as a Muslim woman, as a brown Muslim woman, because, being away from home, that was obviously like a big part of exploring my own religious identity outside of the context of my parents, and like other religious authority figures. And so spaces like Wiley, it's spaces that LEAD provided, and other CMEA programs really gave me the opportunity to explore what it means to me to be a Muslim and what's important to me and how I want to integrate that into my life, and to do it in a way where I didn't feel judged about what I was going through. I think that's like a huge part of what I appreciate so much about dialogue spaces is that it's non-judgmental, and words of affirmation is my love language. So I always feel very affirmed in the space, and getting to also hear from other people's experiences was also very crucial for me. I feel like I was able to really like get into group processing, which I feel like is just a magical moment in dialogue where you know, we have these epiphanies or these realizations about ourselves that like, you know, connect us and bring us together no matter how different our experiences might be. So I feel like overall, like Georgetown and dialogue spaces on campus has allowed me to really find out more about myself and reflect and give myself the time and opportunity to be vulnerable with myself and other people.
Um, Thank you, Dawson. And if we could jump over to Thais to continue the conversation.
Yeah, so one of the biggest examples that I can come up with in terms of academic relationships with identities, I took a class called Lit Film Culture from Mexico/Mexican Americans. And it gave me the space. Oh, wait, before I even get into that, before I took that course, Georgetown offers this class called Spanish for Native Speakers, Advanced Spanish for Native Speakers. And as someone who spoke Spanish growing up and English was like drilled into my academic preparedness growing up, and in a way I kind of lost my connection to my native language. And a lot of the way that I learned Spanish was through informal settings. I've never spoken Spanish in like professional or academic settings. And the fact that I came here and there was a class that offered a class devoted to people who come from backgrounds like me, specifically to like work on like turning your informal Spanish into like a formal type of Spanish, one that can be spoken into with like professors and, you know, the students that are working around with you. And that that class prepared me to take higher level Spanish courses at Georgetown. And because I took that course, I was able to take the one that I spoke about first, which is where we reviewed like art, history, culture about like Mexican indigenous slash Mexican American history, literature. And we went as far back as like the Mexican Revolution and different like Mexican presidencies and the indigenous culture in Mexico. And honestly, it even got so niche that there was like a point where we were comparing like Californian rap or like California rap with Mexican corridos or rancheros. And it's like I remember that day and sitting in the setting, I was like, I don't know if this is a type of space that you would find in a different type of school. It was such a like a niche subject, but because there was courses available that not only allowed me to dive into my Mexican heritage, but also learn about the history, artists, representative leaders, presidents, community leaders. It gave me the space to really dive into that type of work. So definitely my ethnic identity is one that I push through, and not just my ethnic identity, but the way my Mexican heritage is in relationship to other Latinx identities. Because as someone who came from a high school that was like literally 90% Mexican, coming to Georgetown was a big shocker. And honestly, in terms of the Latinx community, it's the most diversity I've seen in terms of like other Latinx communities. Because outside of Pomona, I would never engage with other Latinx communities. So in a way, by coming here, I was able to explore the way Mexican relationships go with like other Latin American countries, especially like Mexican hegemony and the way that Mexican heritage tends to be prioritized over other Latinx issues. And it's, you know, it's been really important about my development of the way I'm prideful about my ethnic identity, but also the way I can construct these spaces to, you know, bring out the voices of other Latinx members, not just people from Mexico or people who are descendants from Mexico. And a second identity that I've been able to explore here is my first generation identity. As someone who had parents who didn't make it past the second grade, and I had a brother who did make it to college, but he dropped out because he went to a school that had no resources for first generation students. And I'm technically going to be the first one to graduate in my line, which is really, it's kind of a lot to take in. And like Georgetown Scholarship Program or the Georgetown Scholars Program, CMEA, CSP, all the little spaces that I've been able to be a part of here have really helped me develop a sense of community with other Christian students, and also like solidarity and alliance with professors who have gone out of their way to prove that they're here for the first gen community. Even I even participated in like a a conference that went to go speak to other first-gen students from all over the nation. And through there, I was able to learn not only the issues that first-generation students are confronting now at this moment, but also like what can we do to build schools to what can we bring back to our schools to build better and safe environments for first-gen students, especially when it comes to like imposter syndrome, and like how can we get away from that, and how can we, really allow students to feel like they belong at this school and that they're worthy of being in these spaces, and they're capable of being critical and analyzing the readings, being able to contribute to the discussion, and just have like a contribution to the growth of Georgetown and Georgetown students and Georgetown culture. So yeah, that's definitely my ethnic identity and first-gen status is the two identities that I've been able to explore here at Georgetown.
Thank you, Thais. De'Ara, do you want to jump in next?
Yeah, sure. I want to piggyback off of a lot of the ideas that have been presented so far. And I realize I didn't talk any about the clubs or organizations that I'm affiliated with. So I'll just do a quick rundown of that really quick. So I actually, for the like long term, I've been involved since freshman year with Georgetown's financial literacy program. So I know like folks who know what's going on with who have paid attention to GameStop and Robinhood and things like that. We talk about those types of things. We talk about investing. We talk about budgeting, saving, stuff like that. So Georgetown does offer a financial literacy program, and and it's student run. So I've been a part of that. Also, I've been blessed to be a resident advisor for the Community Scholars Program for 2 summers in a row. So 3 years straight, I was with scholars, and I think that has played a role. You've heard folks bring up the Community Scholars Program, and again, having the opportunity to return to that program has definitely helped in terms of this identity discussion that that's taking place right now. Um, and then also I've mentored at DC Reads with the Center for Social Justice. So I had like a nice little 2D. He was so fun. And you can have the chance to go out into DC and actually be more familiar with some of the issues around education and literacy. And yeah, but in terms of identity and culture at Georgetown, I just want to piggyback off the idea of having spaces where you can engage in a form of collective healing and reflection. So one of the actual Jesuit values is contemplation and action. So the university has made it one of its tenets really to have periods of reflection, and especially after mass events happen or anything like that, they will encourage these spaces where you can come and talk to folks. Especially the CMEA is responsible for organizing some of those spaces, in spaces for collective healing and just general discussion. But I think I want to talk a lot about my experiences as a Black woman. And so yes, I do identify as an African American woman, and it's funny because I had this kind of encounter at Georgetown one time, and you have we kind of have to get away from a monolithic view of Blackness. You have folks that are Caribbean, you have folks that are African, and they might be from several different, countries or something, you know what I'm saying? So there isn't just one Black experience. And so I think that in the kind of event I'm gonna reflect on a little bit, someone who came up to me and they were like, are you African? And I was sitting next to like someone else who was African American, they said, nah, we just Black, we just Negro, so it was just funny because we kind of have that understanding where it's like, we're different, but we come from, I think, similar experiences, and we're still able to find community. We were actually able to like go to a house party afterwards and just kick it and laugh with them. So in terms of that, I just want to say that it's definitely been a challenge. I think when you come into Georgetown, especially might come from a background where you have more of these understandings of monolithic views of Blackness. do you talk a certain way? Do you wear your hair a certain way? Do you dance a certain way? Do you have rhythm? Things like that. And that's with any minority community. But I think you can definitely feel those a little bit, when you are Black and you also are a woman. And so I also wanted to touch bases on, there's a hashtag over the past year. I wouldn't be fair not to talk about some of the, I think, some of the places where the university might not necessarily get it right in terms of um, talking about issues that impact Black women. So some of you, if you do follow people who go to Georgetown, if you do follow, I don't know if the school has publicly recognized the Georgetown Doesn't Care hashtag, but I just do want to talk about, Black women survivors of rape and sexual assault and things like that. Those issues are very much addressed, and I think more so talked about, over the course of the 4 years that I've been here. I can't say prior to that, but there was this hashtag that was developed, and there's definitely been more of a conversation and more of accountability pushed on the university in terms of recognizing the hardships that Black women, and especially those at intersecting identities of not only gender and race, but also sexuality, come to. And so the university, we've pushed. I haven't necessarily been at the sit-ins. There was a sit-in in the, I think it was the provost's office or the president's office. And, they really want to hold the university accountable. And spaces like those, acts of resistance such as those, I think have definitely facilitated not only conversation, but community within the Georgetown community or the Georgetown Black women survivors community. And so I wanted to touch on that a little bit too, because it's not always going to be your classrooms. It's not always going to be your clubs or organizations, but it might just very well be the responses to some of the inefficiencies that the university, has. And students, I think the student culture at Georgetown is very, very strong in recognizing that. So
Thank you, dear, and thank you for talking about that more. Actually, I'm gonna just we're gonna cycle back to Julian, but I'm going to bring our co-chair Saham into the space because she got to work with the BSC during that time, or early in the stages of that, and talk a little bit more about how student activism happens on campus. I'm really excited that you brought that up, DR, because I really want the students or the prospective students in this space to know that like this is a place where you can cultivate your power and be able to stand up for things that you believe in, and like there are spaces for you to feel enriched in that. So Saham, if you want to talk some more about BSC in Georgetown Doesn't Care.
Yeah, most definitely. Like I was able throughout my 4 years now at Georgetown, I've been a sexual assault peer educator at Georgetown. So like that's been something that I do. And then like I've also been in student government in GASA, I've been a senator and working on initiatives like that. And with the Black Survivor Coalition, like the whole thing is just I think Obella just saying that students have power. And I think that's really amazing because like having to sit in at the president's office, sitting there for like 7 hours at end, or like having people stay there until midnight and go home and do that all over again for a week. That was just a really powerful thing. And like you saw like admin like Rosemary Kilkenny and like Todd Olson actually coming and talk to us about stuff, right? So, oh yeah, GASA, Georgetown University Student Association. I forget about acronyms. Yeah, there's a whole thing. I'm no longer a part of it, but like I was there in the beginning and like also like early on being at the table, talking to admin and all that. So it's like a thing at Georgetown that you feel like if you see something that you're not sitting with, there's other students there that also sit there, right? Because it's like before the Black Survivor Coalition, there was students taking action against interpersonal violence. That was also a thing that was created. But then because they felt like we weren't centering Black voices, that's where the Black Survivor Coalition came up. So yeah, I think Dear really hit on really great points, but that's like something I can add to the conversation. But yeah.
Thank you, Saham. And then we'll jump back to Julian to talk a little bit more about how you have explored identity at Georgetown.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll start, I really echo with Roberto with the sentiment that it's an ongoing process, especially for me as a sophomore. I haven't been here that long. So it's honestly something that I'm still trying to really address and really, get to know more about myself. That said, I do feel like there are a plethora of different avenues that can really allow you to do that. As previously mentioned, CSP. For me, that's really been a central avenue. You know, through it, I was really able to bond with other students with similar identities to myself. And, you know, being in the School of Business, we have like a little group of friends who we're just constantly discussing our experiences given our related backgrounds, how that can relate to professional development, and really trying to advocate for ourselves on this campus. So for me, my primary, you know, intersection with identity has been in pre-professional development. So looking at, for example, club culture, you know, I'll say that the clubs can be quite selective, especially in like pre-professional organizations. So using our identities as minorities, as underrepresented students in these spaces to advocate to leadership, okay, how can we change this process to better address these individuals and to make it a more encapsulating process where those individuals can feel included? You know, that said, while we've also been advocating for change in those spaces, we also took it upon ourselves to start an organization, as I previously mentioned. So you have those potential opportunities as well to create a dedicated space for minority students to help address your identities within the areas that you're interested in. Furthermore, I'll say clubs, like I was a part of the Male Development Association. So that was a group where minority male students were able to go and mentor local high school students as well as local elementary students every single week, just discussing our experiences as students, our experiences as people of our respective races and backgrounds, people of our gender, and really trying to just provide mentorship and host conversations around those topics. Um, Trying to think if there's anything else, but also GSP, the Georgetown Scholars Program, has been crucial to that as well. And I think that's more or less it. And then just also, I want to highlight that through these opportunities, it really sets you up with a basis to really explore them more outside of Georgetown as well. This past summer, you know, through public speaking, through communicating with individuals of my background, then I was able to take a position at an internship running a race equity challenge. So I was able to engage with those topics more, communicate with individuals from my respective background, and then really try and learn more and communicate that knowledge with others outside of Georgetown. So it's plethora of opportunities to really engage with identity here.
Um, just a quick follow-up to the question in the chat. I don't think there are any college campuses or any spaces that aren't going to have experiences of sexual assault and sexual violence. But I hope that the takeaway that you get from this is A, that there are resources for you on campus, both built into the institution, but also where those resources may have holes, there are student voices and student advocates who are working to make sure that those voices are heard and to make sure that those problems are addressed. And I think what is especially amazing about the way that you're able to explore identity in yourself on Georgetown's campus is that it's a constant effort to make sure that you feel empowered to like speak out in your identity and in who you are and all of your intersecting identities, whatever that may be. And I am blessed to be sharing this Zoom screen with people who have really thrived in taking advantage of those opportunities because they're just these beautiful, fully developed human beings, and it's awesome. We have about 7-ish minutes left before I'll throw out some closing remarks. And so I want to know if there are any questions in the chat. We talked a lot about identity. We didn't get to dive into actual academics, which might be a concern for some of you all. And in the meantime, while I wait for questions to come in where they might be coming in, if we could have our panelists perhaps drop a contact in the chat. And so if anyone has specific questions for any of our panelists who, as you heard from the beginning, they're all over the place, different schools, different disciplines, different expertises, different experiences, you can reach out to them directly. I think tying into a point that De'Ara made earlier, part of what is so enriching about this community of students at Georgetown is that like none of them fit into a monolith, which is like validating in a twofold way of it means that you can come and be as you are, right? And it also means that you will find people who are like you, and like you might not mean they're exactly like you, but it means they understand feeling different, which is really, 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 really satisfying. Any questions from the group, from the crowd, from our prospective students? Feel free to, oh, and again, anyone who has ask in their name, you can send questions directly to them. You can put questions in the chat. Also, feel free to raise your hand and you can say your question out loud. What spaces / communities are there for LGBTQ plus students to participate in? Does anyone want to jump in with an answer of our panelists?
I can answer the question.
Cool, thank you, Andre.
Yeah. So so in terms of like student groups, so I think like probably like the two most like well-known ones are like GU Pride and then Queer People of Color. So that's specifically like a community organization for people who identify who are people of color and identify as queer or within the LGBTQ community. There's also you also have like the space of the LGBTQ Center, which is located in the Levy Center. If you have questions about that, y'all can. Obella, do you think you can drop in like an email for Amina Johnson? Amina Johnson is the director for the LGBTQ Center, and so definitely a great resource there as well. And then finally, I think there's also like pre-professional organizations. I don't exactly recall the name of that pre-professional organization, but there's one inside the McDonough School of Business where it's like business students who are identified within the LGBTQ community. And then finally, what I can think of is the Crossroads Living Learning Community. So living learning communities are basically they have different like themes or like missions based on like whatever the floor is. You live with the community on like a similar floor or like in a like similar neighborhood. And so Crossroads is a space for LGBTQ students as well. And so you can apply into the Crossroads LLC or Living Learning Community. I'm not sure what it's going to look like in terms of living learning communities for the next academic year. So I don't want to give any promises on that, but that space is offered to y'all as well.
Awesome, thank you, Andre. I'll sort of start my closing remarks as I wait for more questions because I think this is a little relevant. So as I talked about at the beginning of this session, this Multicultural Preview Day is a preview both of what multiculturalism looks like tangibly on campus at Georgetown, but it is also a preview day for a larger event that will happen in early April called Hoya Saxa Weekend. Typically it would be an in-person event, but we've adapted it for this virtual environment and we're really excited about how we've adapted it. I think it's going to be really good. And as a function of Hoya Saxa Weekend, you'll actually have the opportunity to interact directly with a lot of the people and programs that we've talked about in this process. There will be some club fairs that you'll have the opportunity to interact with. You'll be able to have more conversations like this about identity in some of our events, like a student-only space where just you and the students are able to discuss like those like intimate, messy parts of identity and how they show up on campus. And those will be called the hourglass discussions. And we'll also have something called diversity in and out of the classroom. We'll get to do a little bit more of what happened here. You'll have some more faculty members in the space to talk a little bit about how this shows up in academic spaces. But then we'll also have some of our centers, CMEA, who you got to meet today, but then also a lot of the other centers that have been brought up in different capacities. The Center for Social Justice, the LGBTQ Resource Center, the Georgetown University Women's Center, the Counseling and Psychiatric Services Center. So all those people will be at Hoya Saxa Weekend as well. And so you'll get to get a little bit more of a feel of what those spaces and what the people in those spaces look like. Something that we've really tried to stress over the course of this past 3 hours, and that we'll be trying to stress until you decide where you're going to end up, is that for us at Georgetown, it is about the community, and that's what we're constantly trying to create, and that's what we're constantly trying to connect you to. So hopefully through this Multicultural Preview Day and through Hoya Saxa Weekend, if you choose to join us there as well, you'll get an opportunity to like really get an idea of like who's going to be there when you show up. And I mean like at the front door when you show up. You know, we will be there from the second you get on campus until you leave, virtual campus or otherwise. Um, are there any other questions for our students, for
We have
us?
questions. I have
Oh,
a question that I would love if any or all of y'all can like talk about. It's about like imposter syndrome a little bit on campus. You know, just talk about like because I know being first gen or like entering a space is all that like it can be really intimidating. So like if any of y'all could input your experience with that.
I can talk about that. So I definitely went through imposter syndrome. I would say freshman year and even half of sophomore year, honestly, and it's still like an ongoing process that I'm trying to unlearn for myself constantly. But I think I definitely really felt it when I first got to campus. And Georgetown stress culture can be a lot. It feels like, um, it's like you're meant to be being a student in a certain way. So you're meant to be taking this many credits and in this many clubs and in this many leader positions with this many internships. And it feel like that expectation can feel heavy and like restricting. And especially when I found myself like not necessarily aligning with that. And constantly comparing myself to other people around me and being like, okay, am I not working hard enough? Or am I not, am I not supposed to be here? Was my acceptance a mistake? After I got my grades in, I was like, shit, not doing great, comparing myself to other people again. And so just feeling like not capable of being a student at Georgetown was really hard. It definitely took a toll on my mental health. And I think what helped me come out of that, and again, like I said, it's still something that I go through often. But I think in unlearning that for myself, and validating for myself that I do belong at Georgetown, has really come from being able to lean on the communities that I've found on campus, and my loved ones, and also like recognizing what my priorities are in life. And so just being like, okay, well, if I don't want to be, doing all of these clubs or all of these internships, like, what am I doing this for? Who am I doing this for? And if it's not for myself, and if it's not bringing me joy and filling my cup, so it's got to go. So I feel like really just finding spaces, activities, classes, whatever it was for me that brought me joy, like that was it. Like that's my priority right now. And wherever I can, grow with that is what's most important to me, is like just finding things that bring me joy and make me happy, and recognizing that, like my thing was always like, oh my God, everybody has their shit together way more than I do. But like, really, I just got my shit together in a different way. And recognizing that there are different paths to having your shit together and what that looks like for you, and finding ways to define what success, happiness, all of that means to you. And the fact like that there are so many ways to do that on campus for yourself. So
go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, I mean, agree with everything that was said. As a sophomore, I'm kind of still getting over that hump a bit. I will say, honestly, this kind of virtual semester and ongoing system has kind of helped me with it. I wanted to emphasize just like taking a step back and really emphasizing personal reflection and, who you are, what you're good at, what you're able to bring to the table, what you're ultimately hoping to get, and then looking at how you can really pursue those avenues. And sometimes it can even help like asking others like, hey, what do you think I'm good at? Or like eventually over time you'll get feedback and you'll come to recognize, small little things that help you realize like, hey, I'm really good at speaking up in spaces, or really good at researching. and you come to terms with these skills. And I think an important realization is that, you're not necessarily going to be good or great at everything. But, because you're here, there are certain skills that you certainly bring to the table, and recognizing them is crucial. And it's a process that can take time. It may not occur instantly, but I think it's really key to do to really help you realize your worth and overall just feel better about being on this campus. I thought I had another point. I'm trying to think. I'll leave it at that. I think that works.
That was a great thing to leave it at. That was a great thing to leave it at. We are coming up on the end of our time. I honestly could talk about this with this group of people forever until the end of time, and I'm sad to even have to end it early. I mean, not early, we're running behind, but regardless. I want to thank our amazing panelists for taking time to be a part of this experience. We are incredibly appreciative of you all. You all would drop in some serious nuggets. Y'all have all the guidance, all the talent, all of the beauty. I'm obsessed. It is amazing. And yeah, thank y'all so much. With our last couple of minutes, I just want to thank all of our prospective students for being in this space on a Saturday. I know we are all very, very, very much over being on Zoom screens all day. It can be a lot very easily. And so we really appreciate y'all for taking time to come and learn about what Georgetown has to offer for students of color and how we can enrich your experience on this campus, and help you walk away fuller people, and realizing your full self. It's not even necessarily anything that we have to teach you. It's just what we have for you all to take advantage of because you already have everything that you need. You will hear from us via email afterwards. It will feature, and I'm going to drop it in the chat just to get this started now because it's one of those things. I know everyone is probably over taking evaluations and feedbacks, but if y'all could give me a little feedback, I would be extremely appreciative. And you will also get this in an email from us later. And in that email, you will get more information about Hoya Saxa Weekend, to hold those dates for when registration will come out, and what you can expect from that weekend and what you can expect from us, and any other information that we might have for you, some admissions information that the admissions office may have for you, all that good stuff. And in the meantime, if y'all have any questions, feel free to email us, Hoya Saxa CMEA at georgetown.edu, and I will put that in the chat. Or you can email me directly. Cool. And that is also in the chat. And we hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much for being a part of this experience. Thank you so much for showing up in the way that you all have. Thank you again to our amazing panelists, to the CMEA staff, to the admissions crew, to the Hoya Saxa Weekend committee. I am literally nothing without you. And thank you so much.